Sean and I are having a debate about this, about about pole position and the terminology. Go on, Sean.
Well, we're not having a debate. What we're having is a clarification in that you're wrong and I'm right. So it's not a debate. It's me telling you what the correct answer is. But do go on.
Well, my view has always been, don't forget, I've got two racing drivers with me here. So I think I think racing drivers like the idea of, you go home on a Saturday night or Friday night and you've won the pole, you've got pole position. Whether or not you actually start from pole position is sort of somewhat irrelevant. But so Alex, help me on this one. Do you agree with me that pole position is the award for being fastest in qualifying?
Yeah, the fastest lap has to matter. But I'm not too interested in this conversation, to be honest, this argument, because I think it's just going to go on for a little bit and then they'll make a decision. I don't know if I like it or not, but yeah, if you ask me from a pure driver's point of view, it has to be whoever's at the fastest lap in the session.
I think I can add to that, actually, Matthew, just coming from experience, because
as long as you're helping me, you can carry on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give my best driver's perspective on it. But when I was racing in GP3 and obviously coming into F2 eventually, or GP2 at the time, the FIA and obviously the championship within Formula One, they sort of experimented with the idea of reverse grids. And to be honest, as a racing driver, I mean, there's no better feeling than knowing on the day itself, when you do qualifying, that you do get the pole position. And even with reverse orders, or basically just mixing up the grid in some form or fashion, or even, changing it up a bit, I think everyone still likes, from my driver's perspective, we all still like the classic format, where it's one session of qualifying. If you're the fastest in that session, your pole position, you deserve to start at the front. And no other situation, I think, should get in the way of that. Like, if you truly want to accept, being the quickest driver that weekend. So qualifying for any driver, I think you can kind of feel the most proud. And when it's a bit, manufactured, I wouldn't say, it's maybe a strong word. I don't think racing drivers like it too much. They definitely want to have the outright pole.
And I should clarify that, of course, I'm happy because this year pole position is in the record books to Max Verstappen because he was fastest in qualifying on Friday. But Sean, that you don't like that because he didn't. Well, he actually did in the end, didn't he? But he might not have actually started from pole for the Grand Prix. That's your concern.
Yeah, it comes back to how pole position is actually defined, because pole position has never been defined as being the driver fastest over one lap. The pole position has always been credited to the driver who is in first place on the official starting grid for the Grand Prix. No matter how that was achieved, it doesn't matter whether it was Monaco 1950 when the pole position went to the driver who was quickest in the first practice session, and then the first two rows were locked in, and then all the other guys had to qualify after that. It doesn't matter if we go to the late 2000s when Q3 was run on race fuel, so you could actually put 3 laps of fuel in the car, guarantee yourself pole position, even though you were obviously slower than other guys who were running half a tank of fuel. This happened most notoriously in that 6-car Indianapolis 05 race when Toyota knew they were not going to be racing on Sunday, so they put 3 laps of fuel in Trulli's car and took pole position. That's not a fair fight, but nonetheless, pole position was accredited to Trulli because he was in first place on the starting grid in Sunday's race. What this change of definition will now do is give this incredible dichotomy in the record books of, hang on a minute, I read that Verstappen was on pole, and I've come here today and Leclerc's on pole. What's happened there? Wait, there was another race, fair enough. So, and also, wait, Ferrari have locked out the front row, but you said Red Bull were on pole. So how are they locked out the front row, but Verstappen's on pole? And Verstappen, theoretically today, it was theoretically possible. It didn't happen. We've kicked this can down the road, but it was theoretically possible today for Verstappen to have a Grand Slam victory and start from last on the grid. He would have had a win from pole with the fastest lap and lead every lap, but started 20th on the grid. Now that gets very complicated to deal with very, very quickly. And you also remember that qualifying wasn't always one session. There were 2 sessions. Sometimes there were as many as 4 sessions up until the late 1960s. So it was never the basis of a single hour. It was never the basis of just knockout. It was, there was an elimination format, which we tried for 2 races in 2016 before we all realized it was rubbish. There was a 2-lap aggregate in 2005. It was theoretically possible for a driver to be on pole without leading either session. If they had the fastest aggregate time, they would be on pole. So it was not defined by that. It was always defined simply who is in first place on the official starting grid. That was the only definition we ever had. It's Germany 1959, the first time it ever happened where a driver was fastest in qualifying but wasn't on pole. So there's plenty of precedent, and I feel like we've gone away from that, and now it's caused all sorts of problems. I'll shut up now. I'm really sorry. I get on a rant when I get onto this.
And it's good that you've done that, Sean. Actually, we did a poll, and we should have a look at the poll results quickly, Alex, which was that we actually asked our followers.
Can I change my answer? Because I like Sean's answer. I'm going to vote with him.
And it's interesting because I was able to express my manifesto when we did this tweet, and we got, and in inverted commas, I won. Not that I really won, but I think you're absolutely right. The more we hear Sean describe it, the more we realise that there's still something not quite right about the system, in particular for the word, the title.
I would say, Matt,
I want to talk about the weekend itself. How do we feel about the sprint weekend as a format itself? Do we prefer it to a regular weekend, or do we, not even that, are we happy with it to happen 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times a season?
I do like keeping it simpler. I don't like this whole that we get to the end of the looking at the history books. Oh, these little sprint races here. Not quite sure if they're races or qualifying sessions. Let's just define them clearly. And I think I'm on board with what Sean has just said. Do I like them? I actually like it because it mixes it up a bit throughout the year. And maybe we should try some other interesting stuff like this. Ultimately, I'm more traditionalist. I do like the fact that we have one big race, and that should be the main thing that everyone builds to. But I do like that. I wouldn't like to see any more races, to be honest. I think 3 is just a nice number. But I do like the little bit of variety that it brings.